Happy New Year everyone and welcome back to On Track GP. I'm Jamie Chambers and in our first video of the new year, this is our 2023 season driver rankings from 22nd to 1st in association with Planet F1. The 2023 season is over, so it's time to look back at the rankings and where they were handed out over the current crop of F1 drivers during the season. For every race, Planet F1 rated every driver from 0 to 10, and we have now crunched the numbers to give you the average across the year. Drivers' ratings explained. Every driver started the weekend slap bang in the middle with a 5 out of 10 rating, and we operated on a sliding scale from there. We took the entire weekend into account, not just the race itself. However, the scores were weighted more towards the driver's race performance, but qualifying performances, good or bad, were also factored into our ratings, and in extreme circumstances, practice also played a minor part in the overall score. In at 22, Nick De Vries, 4.65 from 10 races. It's not often the Red Bull scouting department gets something so wrong, but it's very clear early on in the 2023 season that Nick De Vries was not going to cut it. Encouraged by his Monza Super Sub debut for Williams in 2022, it was reportedly Helmut Marko who led the campaign to sign the 28-year-old, but once he did get the seat, he failed to live up to expectations. Yes, the AlphaTauri car was not great at the start of the year, but Yuki Tsunoda regularly had the beating of him. Perhaps he was let go too quickly, but at the same time, there was little to suggest De Vries was going to turn it around. Number 21, Logan Sargeant, 5.09. Looking increasingly like it was too soon for Logan Sargeant to make the jump up as he went from P4 in F2 to the top series. Meanwhile, the champion from that year, Felipe Drugovich, is still on the sidelines learning his trade as Aston Martin reserve. Sargeant is by no means the worst driver to ever race in Formula 1, but he has made a lot of raw mistakes that have hit the Williams bank balance hard. He did score points, albeit due to the double disqualifications of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc in Austin, but the 22-0 scoreline in quali compared to Alex Albon says a lot. Number 20, Kevin Magnussen, 5.43. After an excellent return to the sport in 2022, everyone expected Kevin Magnussen to kick on, and most would have predicted he would have had a beating of Hulkenberg, who was performing his comeback of his own. But that just didn't happen. While Hulkenberg has found success in qualifying, Magnussen has not, meaning that come race day and a car that cannot protect its tyres, he was always going to be facing an uphill battle. A good performance in Miami was a rarity in an otherwise poor season which saw him score just 3 points. Such was the extent of his downfall that there were question marks over whether Haas were going to renew his deal, but ultimately they kept the faith. Number 19, Zhou Guanyu, 5.55. Considering both Alpha drivers struggled, it is hard to know just how much blame can be apportioned to Zhou Guanyu. His best race was Spain, but other than that, it has been a largely forgettable year for the Chinese driver. There was even some reports he was on the chopping block for future F2 champion Theo Pourchaire, but Zhou has held on to the seat for another year at least. Number 18, Valtteri Bottas, 5.8. Valtteri Bottas in 2023 will most likely be remembered for his bogan lifestyle, duffman costumes, naked calendars and cycling, rather than what he did on the track, as this was not a memorable year for the Finn. Number 17, Lance Stroll, 5.82. Lance Stroll was just 1 point away from his most in a season, but when your teammate has scored 132 more than you, it's not a great look. His best performance arguably came at the start of the year when he battled through the pain of a double wrist injury in pre-season, but as he has returned to full fitness, he has found himself unable to match the achievements of Fernando Alonso. It's hard to know what comes next for Stroll. Aston has suggested his seat is safe, but with his dad footing the bill, that is hardly a surprise. Maybe it will come down to if he has been bothered enough to perform in the next year. Judging by his demeanour in press conferences, that may not be far from the case. Number 16, Nico Hulkenberg, 5.84. If these rankings were done on qualifying alone, Nico Hulkenberg would surely have been amongst the top 10. His performances on Saturday have been exceptional, pushing the Haas car far higher than it had any right to be. But by the same measure, the Haas car pulled him down on the Sunday with tyres being a season-long issue. Fix that problem and Hulkenberg will no doubt score double the figures that he did last year. Number 15, Yuki Tsunoda, 6.32. Some great performances from Yuki Tsunoda mixed with a few mistakes that are still part of his driving makeup. At the start of the year when the car was not great, Tsunoda had a real talent for fighting for that final point spot, but ultimately missed out on that place on more than one occasion. When the car did improve and Daniel Ricciardo returned to the team, any suggestion that he would blow Tsunoda out of the water proved unfounded, and the Japanese driver capped the year with a great race in Abu Dhabi. Number 14, Sergio Perez, 6.39. A brief flicker of a title charge at the start of the year was extinguished in the Miami Grand Prix, and Max Verstappen's drive to supremacy from then on seemed like a hammer blow to Sergio Perez's confidence. Q3 became a real issue for the Mexican, failing to reach that stage on 5 consecutive occasions and 9 times throughout the year. Such was Perez's fade into mediocrity that a P9 starting spot in the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix didn't seem to be a talking point. In a dominant year like 2023, such off days are okay, but in a more competitive environment, it is likely Red Bull will not be so accommodating. Number 13, Esteban Ocon, 6.41. A middle-of-the-road kind of year for Esteban Ocon, with that Alpine that's occupying a no-man's land in the middle of the championship. Having beaten Alonso in 2022, Ocon would have hoped to do the same to Gasly this season, but missed out by a very small margin. The highlight was the podium in Monaco, which earned him and the team many crates of beer. Joint 11, Pierre Gasly, 6.66. Certainly not a bad season for Pierre Gasly's Alpine debut. A podium in Zandvoort was the highlight, but the first of this year was described by the Frenchman as one of the most unlucky of his career. A double DNF in Australia and the Alpine low point, and Gasly had to endure a fair amount of team upheaval, with 2 of his bosses losing their job. But all in all, finishing ahead of his teammate was a good sign for the year. Joint 11, Carlos Sainz, 6.66. For the sole driver who managed to stop Red Bull from winning every race, being in the bottom half of the drivers' list is perhaps a little harsh for Carlos Sainz, but it was a very inconsistent year for the Spaniard. He seemed to hit the form of his career around Monza and Singapore, but it tailed away as the season drew to a conclusion. Number 10, Daniel Ricciardo, 6.79 from 7 races. Daniel Ricciardo's return to F1 may not have been the confirmation of his skills that he was looking for, but that was mostly due to him being a victim of his own misfortune more than anything he did. His crash put him on the sidelines again, and he returned to find a quick AlphaTauri car, but still things did not go his way, such as a tear-off strip getting stuck in his car early in Abu Dhabi. Number 9, Oscar Piastri, 6.82. Oscar Piastri can perhaps feel a little hard done by to be this low down on the list after arguably the best rookie season since Lewis Hamilton in 2007. In the opening races, it looked as if he had made a terrible choice swapping Alpine for McLaren, but come Silverstone, his decision was vindicated many times over. He picked up a sprint victory, one of just 2 drivers to deny Red Bull a win, and did more than enough to suggest a very strong 2024. Number 8, Alex Albon, 6.84. Considering the limitations of the Williams car, 2023 was an excellent year for Alex Albon. His performance following a simple question of does the circuit have long straights? Because chances were if they did, then Albon was strong. His best finish of the year came in Canada and Monza, and he scored 27 points, almost 7 times more than he did last year. Number 7, Charles Leclerc, 6.89. The highest of highs and lowest of lows for Charles Leclerc, which seems to be a common occurrence for him now. He had some very strong races, most notably in Baku and Abu Dhabi, but also had some poor ones in Australia, Spain and Zandvoort. He ended the year with 6 podiums, which was double the tally of his teammate, but it was Carlos Sainz who got that all-important win. Number 6, George Russell, 7.05. After an impressive 2022 in what was a difficult time for the Mercedes team, Russell has found life much harder this time round. He started the year much better than he ended it, with a run of form around the summer break highlighting his difficulties both in quali and the race itself. But he did save the best for last with a strong race in Abu Dhabi that proved vital in ensuring Mercedes held on to P2. Number 5, Liam Lawson, 7.1 from 5 races. An average score that was heavily impacted by how few races he took part in. That should not take away from Liam Lawson's impressive achievement. He was dropped in at a moment's notice to replace the injured Ricciardo, and a single practice race was all that separated him from his F1 debut, but even in the Zandvoort race, he proved that he has what it takes. His performance would have improved to the point that he finished P9 in Singapore and has done enough to suggest that he is ready for a full-time seat whenever that opportunity arises. Number 4, Lewis Hamilton, 7.36. It may not have ended in the 8th world title, but 2023 was definitely a step up for Lewis Hamilton from the horror show that was 2022. Hamilton's form mirrored that of the W14s, where it was good at some circuits, terrible at others. The only real blemish on his record would be the season finale, where Russell extracted much more out of the car than Hamilton was able to, but other than that, he continues as the lead driver. His best races were the Spanish and US Grand Prix, with the former being the first chance to see the B-Spec car in action. Number 3, Fernando Alonso, 7.39. Aston Martin's performance may have waned as the year went on, but Fernando Alonso's never did. Making what seemed at best a sideways move over the course of the winter, from that first race it shows why Alonso has opted for Aston. When the car was on the best, Alonso regularly ended the podium, but as it got weaker, his true talent was on display. He beat Lance Stroll by 132 points, almost single-handedly dragging Aston, Team Silverstone, to their best constructors finish since 2020. Number 2, Lando Norris, 7.55. At the start of the year and after two scores of 6.5 and 4.5, the idea of Lando Norris being the second best driver would have seemed impossible. But such has been the turnaround in McLaren that Norris has been the second most consistent driver of the season and ends the year with the fourth most amount of podiums. While that first win still eludes him, something he would surely have achieved had Red Bull not been so dominant, Norris has more than doubled his career podium tally in a single season. If the 2024 McLaren car is as good as the 2023 one, then that number is only going to go one way. And number 1, Max Verstappen, 9.3. Max Verstappen being top of this list should come as no surprise, but what is more impressive is just how far ahead he is. Verstappen averaged 9.3 per race, which is pretty much near perfection. To do that over 22 races is outstanding, and not to mention his level of expectation is so much greater than everyone else's that even a routine win sometimes did not earn him a perfect 10. He scored 4 Mercs at 5 races this year: Miami, Spanish, Dutch, Japanese and Abu Dhabi, and barring Singapore, he never went lower than 8.5. So that is our final drivers' rankings for 2023. What do you think of the final standings? Which drivers for you are too low or too high on our list? What are your predictions for the 20 drivers starting the 2024 season? Let us know what you think in the comments, and remember to like, comment, share and subscribe. This has been On Track GP. I've been Jamie Chambers. Keep the pedal to the metal, and I'll catch you in the next video.